Hello and welcome. You're watching a special edition of Power Lunch Southern Africa, live from Johannesburg, the commercial capital of South Africa, a country that has been voting from 7 a.m. this morning, electing new leaders for parliament as well as the national president. So we're calling it a special broadcast because we're talking everything to do with this election only today. No markets, except to the extent that they are being impacted by what we are seeing happening around the country today. And I can tell you the chief barometer, the South African rand, is very, very stable indeed. I saw 1825 at one point, and it has not moved much since then. So let me tell you what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking back to 1994, that momentous occasion when we saw the snakes of lines across the country as black people voted for the first time in the history of this country. Then we're going to move and say, but where are we today? Try to examine the issues that were before the electorate in this election, and then try and put on some long goggles and look ahead. What kind of a future awaits the people of South Africa as they make their political choices? Let me introduce my guests for you. In the studio with me, Professor Sampson Mamphweli. He's head of Energy Secretariat, and this is at the South African National Energy Development Institute. Sir, welcome.
Thank you.
To my left, I have John Foster-Pedley. He's Chairperson, British Chamber of Business, Southern Africa. Sir, welcome.
Thank you.
Joining us virtually, in no particular order, you're going to see them on screen. We've got Khulekani Mathe, incoming CEO, Business Unity South Africa. George Herman, Director and Chief Investment Officer, Citadel. And Joseph Ruiters, Board Member, Institute of Business Advisors, Southern Africa. As you will see, we've tried to assemble voices of business, academia, as well as people who are inside the institutions that are driving perhaps one of the bigger conversations that we're having in this country, which of course is power. Let me begin in studio. And gentlemen, as I was saying to you earlier, I'd really like to reflect first of all on where we are today. There are many people who take what is happening today for granted. Those of us who are older know how important, momentous this occasion is. Can I begin with you, John?
Sure.
Just your thoughts as South Africans go out to vote. We know we all have sort of different emotions. For some, great, but for others, I saw a youngster and she had voted for the first time. I'm saying youngster because I looked at her and I saw that she's probably no less than probably about 20 or something. And I said, did you vote? She says, yay. Do you still feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, my voice will give me away. I'm British originally, so I've spent 35 years here. But the emotions of seeing that election, after apartheid, seeing people queuing up, just a fantastic vibe, was extraordinary. And of course, democracy is hard. It's very hard, and we've been through hard times. But it's not a time to be pessimistic. Now people are voting. Quite good turnout, I gather. I think you told me that earlier on. And it really is important to stay optimistic, even in the face of great troubles. I believe in the democracy. I believe in the South African talent and people. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see this election coming out. And who knows what's going to happen, but we'll sort it out whatever happens.
And it's that uncertainty, I think, for me, that is really crucial, isn't it? To say that every single one of the voters that are going to stand in that ballot box is going to make a choice. Nobody knows their choice. They make their choice of their own volition and go and choose who they want to represent. But I wanted your reflections.
Yeah, and this is a very, for me, it reminds me of 1994. I couldn't vote then because of age. Okay. I don't want to expose my age here now. I followed proceedings quite closely because I was politically active even though I was young. This morning, as I drove out of where I live, I was about to go to the voting station before coming here, and I saw these many cars at the voting station and many people queuing, and I realized that if I join that queue, I won't make the show. And I decided, let me rather go to the show, and then I'll go back and vote. But for me, there are a number of critical factors. The economy that has suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic. the impact of load shedding on the economy, and many other economic issues going forward. And as you know, my focus is more on the energy side of things.
Absolutely, and we're going to be talking about that because there are many who, as they went into that booth, were thinking, is this for real or is the power going to go out? Okay, let's take to our virtual guest. Khulekani, if I can begin with you, just your thoughts as we watch people going in and exercising their democratic right.
Thank you, Godfrey. I have to say that I did get a feeling of that I felt in 1994. So I did vote in 1994. I mean, I was thinking that I'm the youngest in this group, but clearly not. And to then see the queues again today, very long, where I voted, and it gave me an indication that, I mean, we know that there were some glitches which partly contributed to perhaps the queues, but by and large, I think the excitement among South Africans about this particular election, I stood in the queue for quite a while, and so younger people are very well represented in the queues, and felt a sense that South Africans have decided that they're not going to leave anything to chance. They're going to exercise their right to vote, make sure that they make their choices that they can live with for the next 5 years and hopefully longer.
Absolutely. Joseph, can I come to you? Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Godfrey. You know what? You all are talking about 1994. Say approximately a month ago, I attended a big event at Athlone Stadium, and it took me back to 1992 when Nelson Mandela was released, and he had his first address in that stadium. And this election actually gave me that same vibe that I had in 1992. I could have seen the excitement here in the Western Cape pertaining to the elections. I think, and if I look at where we are at this point in time, transition has never been easy. And if I look from 1992 and where we are today, there's a lot of things that transpired. And I think this is one of the elections. I think in the past, we had a leading party that has taken the lead in South Africa, which is sometimes not always good for an economy and a nation to have one party. But what excites me about this, the possibility of having coalitions, the possibilities of having a multi-party. And I think that, for me in itself, leads to better governance. And I think that's what we need in South Africa for a strong democracy, to have a powerful, better governance model.
Absolutely. And I think amidst the noise of this democracy, many people lose sight of the fact that they are able to make the noise that they are able to make, and think this in some ways curtailment of the freedom that this country enjoys. May I say, having done a few trips across the continent, this is not always the case. George, I'm coming to you last for your observations on this particular poll, and perhaps, I don't know how far you were back in 1994.
Yes, I definitely voted in 1994, Godfrey. And Professor Sampson, you had to be there early to get it done before the show. And what pleases me is that every single time I go to vote, just like this morning again, and just like in 1994, is the wonderful sense of community whilst you're standing in those queues. How you can just see, sense, and feel how people want to make things work for society, for business, and for the country. And that's what we should always strive to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we should never forget that, and not forget to celebrate that particular emphasis. So let's dig into the issues that are defining this election. And as we know, they are many, but we can perhaps prune them down into very specific areas. So what I wanted to do, gentlemen, was to ask all of you just to frame your top 3 issues. And I know I'm cutting back a little bit, but that's my role. I'm an editor. What I do is I edit. I put red ink and I said, specify it, reduce it to this because this is what I want to focus on. I'm beginning with you, Prof. Just your top 3 issues that you think were before the voter as they went into this election.
Yeah, load shedding, top of the agenda.
I started with you,
As you know, the country has been grappling with this for quite a long time, since 1998. So it's load shedding, it's economic growth and job creation. Those for me are the 3 main things that people will be looking at going into these elections.
Yeah. So I'm doing some more editing as well. So here I say to the youngsters that I work with, guys, we don't call it load shedding. Yes. It is power cuts and power shortages, because effectively what you have is a situation where you're deprived of one because it's not available in enough quantities. Anyway, having nitpicked a little bit like that, just perhaps talk a little bit about how you perceive a voter would have gone into that booth and said, these are my 3 top issues, and in particular, this power cut issue, in relation to the fact that over the past 63 days, it's incredible, isn't it? We haven't worried about whether there's power or not.
Yes. So the main thing is how the current government or the outgoing administration dealt with load shedding. For the first time, we had a president in President Ramaphosa who provided leadership, in my view, because he went through consultation process, consulting business, consulting all the relevant stakeholders in the energy sector, and came up with what we called the Energy Action Plan, and which he then started implementing. I would say halfway through the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, he realized that he needed a warm body that will have to look specifically on a daily basis after this particular crisis. And that's when he brought in the minister in the presidency responsible for electricity. And at that particular point in time, I was following the space. The energy availability factor for the coal fleet was sitting at about 41%. Today, it's hovering between 61% and 65%. And sometimes it hits 70%, which is why we don't have load shedding, part of the reasons. And the other reason was some of the reforms that the current administration brought in, especially on the regulatory side of things, where they removed the licensing requirements for IPPs when it comes to production of electricity. We have seen about 12 gigawatts registered with NERSA because of that. The intervention on the small-scale embedded generation, rooftop solar PV, and in businesses and households, we've seen up to 6 gigawatts in terms of the increase of the share on that. And that is part of the reasons why we don't have load shedding today, because during the day, Eskom is able to generate reserves using the part of the 6 gigawatts that is removed from the network, and then at a later stage they are able to provide us with power. So there's a whole lot of things that the president did through the Energy Action Plan, and we're starting to see fruits now. As things stand, Eskom is working on bringing back about 3,000 megawatts from the breakdowns. And if that happens, we might continue with good news. We might continue not to have load shedding. But our predictions, which Eskom concurred with, are that we might have stage 2 load shedding at least when we go right into the winter period, because of the demand will increase. As things stand, we have lower demand. It's hovering between 24,000 megawatts and 26,000 megawatts. Once it hits the 30,000 megawatts and 34,000 megawatts, that's when we will have to start load shedding coming back.
And for transparency as well, just to mention the fact that the South African National Energy Development Institute is a branch of government.
The South African National Energy Development Institute is a Schedule 3 state-owned entity. It's under our main shareholder is the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, and we work closely with the Department of Science and Innovation, and we are heavily involved in the entire energy space, including on plans to end load shedding.
Absolutely, and I'm going to come back and ask whether the lack of load shedding or power cuts is because you're playing politics. Let's John, your thoughts, your top 3. You had his: load shedding, power cuts, economic growth and jobs.
Well, I won't repeat what he said, but I'm delighted to know that come Saturday we'll have power.
I will lose my bet if
I know everyone was saying that, but let's be optimistic. I think it's great. Well, I won't repeat the same, but I think for me, education top the list. When I talk education, it's all the way through, from primary through to universities, to government skills, to business skills, everything to do with knowledge, skills, and capability. That we can't go anywhere with unless that gets to everyone in the nation, not an exclusive few. Second for me is governance. We all know, and we've been through some dark times, governance with teeth, unfortunately, and governance also with hope. So we need to have accountability, we need the rule of law, but also we need people to understand governance, and we need to have a certain amount of patience in that process, because you can't turn it overnight. And finally, we need investment. So all the conditions that bring people to invest in South Africa, reducing risk, making sure money can come in and come out, making it easy to start businesses, making things transparent. And underlying all that is something I don't think we do enough of, which is giving hope to people in South Africa, believing in South Africans, believing in us, believing in the people. These people, I know as an educator, they're amazing. They are very talented people we have here. But we don't seem to believe it. Why not? Stop trying to be as good as them, believe in ourselves, and then the system will develop.
And glorifying the story of those that have decided they are packing for wherever. Did you talk up your book at the beginning and said education?
Well, a book.
No, your book, your business.
Oh, yes.
You did?
Yes, I did. Of course I did. What do you think? I mean, I believe in education. Of course I will.
Education, absolutely. And we know how transformative it can be. Let's bring in the other voices. If I can begin with you, George, your thoughts in respect to the key 3 issues that you think were before voters today?
I'm going to second my 2 colleagues there. Growth, education, governance. If we have the governance, then we'll get the investment. And yes, talking my book, undoubtedly we want an environment that is conducive to global capital investing in South Africa, because that will sustain and expand growth. And that expansion and growth will lead to higher employment and overall a healthier South Africa.
Yeah, but what did you put right at the top?
I put economic growth right at the top.
Economic growth right at the top. Economic growth, and we're going to come back and talk about who is offering the best prospects for economic growth. Joseph, can I come to you?
Yeah, thank you, Godfrey. The 3 things, and I'm going to talk from the perspective of IBASA. We are providing services as trusted business advisors to SMMEs and the small business sector. But I think in our space, the 3 key things that we believe the voters that's been affected is the whole issue of unemployment, which is, and specifically youth unemployment, that is 61%, which got a massive impact on job creation. The second thing for us is the economic enabling environment, the ease of doing business. And then the last critical thing that I believe that is on the agenda is I call it infrastructure maintenance and service delivery, is specifically the way that we manage resources, our existing resources. If we look at our roads, if we look at specifically some of the things that that is driving local economies and local communities, that's got a dire effect on service delivery. And so those are the 3 key things that we believe is on the ballot today.
Yeah, and definitely spoken from your corner. I can see that, no question about that. I like the particular focus on the ease of doing business, though that's a tricky one. We've been trying to get an interview with, I think the president appointed if I remember, was it Steve Peary? I can't remember, but he appointed someone to specifically look into red tape and try and see if they could reduce it. We've been trying to get an interview, to get an update. We've not been able to get it. Perhaps you can help us to do so. Thanks for that thought. Khulekani, I'm coming to you last because we write about what you guys want every single day. But for the record, please.
Thanks, Godfrey, and it's very hard to disagree with anything that's been said, but my top priority would be economic growth, and the second priority would be employment creation, and thirdly, governance. And these are important because we are where we are because we have failed from a governance point of view. So getting governance right is absolutely critical and in propelling this economy forward and creating conditions for growth and for people to be able to, gain employment.
And I just wanted to follow up on the issue of employment. So the other time I had an interview with an economic advisor to the Indian Prime Minister. And as we all know, India is powering ahead in terms of the economy, no question. And I asked the question, how have you dealt with the issue of youth unemployment? And she said to me, in India, we have a concerted drive to get people changing the mindset that when you leave school, you go and you look for a job. She said they focus on making sure the education system produces people who are capable of trying to convert their education into an economic opportunity. Do you think in South Africa we're doing enough of that?
I don't think we are, and I don't think it's only an education issue. Education is absolutely important and most certainly would contribute and go a long way in creating or educating our young people so that they can start their own businesses, etc. But that goes to the points that Joseph was making, which is that we need to create the conditions, on the other hand, for small businesses to be able to thrive. Yeah. At the moment, the environment is just not conducive to running a successful business, more so for small businesses than it is for larger businesses.
Yeah. So when we come back, I'm going to ask a trick question. And the trick question is, who do you believe has got the policies to create the right conditions to create employment and jobs and opportunity? We're going to take a break. And when we come back, as I said, we continue this conversation and we're really trying to understand what kind of a future potentially could come out of the elections that are being conducted today. Welcome back. You're watching Powerline Southern Africa. It's a special edition as we continue to cover South Africa's seventh election since the dawn of democracy. There are a number of other things that are happening across the continent. In Nairobi, we've got the 59th annual meetings of the African Development Bank, and the bank earlier actually releasing its flagship report, and this is the Africa Economic Outlook report, and they are forecasting African GDP growth to rise to 3.7% in 2024, and then reaching 4.3% in 2025. And we know that East Africa, where that summit is being held, has been really the engine of growth across the African continent. Southern Africa, no, because of the reasons that we're talking about today here, where there's been little to no growth in South Africa for more than a decade. Also, if you check out our website, actually, there's another big story. Anglo-American has done it again. It has rejected a fourth approach from BHP Billiton, and so it does look like perhaps this one may not well go over the line. Perhaps BHP is now going to go hostile and try and reach out to Anglo's shareholders and say to them, tell you what, your management is very intransigent. We think we are offering a better deal, and we think we can do the restructuring that you require better than these guys. Fascinating story for us who watch these kind of stories. But let me take you now to Midrand, just in northern Johannesburg, for the latest update in terms of what's happening around the country. And there I am joined by my colleague, that's Palesa Mofoke. So Palesa, I see behind you are those numbers that are indicating who's winning or who's losing. What's going on there?
Well, Godfrey, certainly you are right, but I can tell you that the numbers have not been updated yet, so we do not know who's winning and who is losing yet. But Godfrey, it's exciting to know that the day has finally come, the day where about 13 million registered voters in the Republic of South Africa are trooping out to cast their vote and finally have their say. Now, Godfrey, just to remind you, today officially marks the 7th democratic elections since the end of apartheid in 1994, when late Nelson Mandela came into power, and he was the president of South Africa as well as leader of the African National Congress. Now, if you do the math here, Godfrey, that is the 30 years that the ANC has remained in the leading chair. But of course, it remains to be seen whether the ANC will be able to retain its position as the country's leading party, just given the fact that, as we have been speaking to some of the analysts, they have been predicting and saying that the ANC, for the first time in history, it may be forced into an arranged marriage, or perhaps should I say, it may be forced into a coalition party with the smaller opposition party. But of course, this will be under the condition that it fails to clinch a parliamentary majority vote. But earlier on, Godfrey, Fifi and I, we have been busy in the morning. We were in Sampson, a city that is considered to be Africa's largest, or rather richest square mile. And we spoke to some of the voters that were queuing there to ask them exactly what will inform their vote today. And this is what they had to say.
My name is Meryl Uck, and some of the key issues that I'm going to be voting on are approaches to foreign policy, approaches to finances, distribution of finances in cabinet, and approaches to the energy crisis and climate as well. So, yeah, those are some of the things that are going to be informing my decision today.
My name is Naso Bantubani, and I'll be voting on kind of us reducing corruption and also keeping some of the kind of hard-won benefits that have come from getting a democracy. Stuff like, I guess, the racial redress that we've kind of won over the time, and also minimum wage as well.
I am Tato, and the key issues I'm voting on is unemployment and inequality, essentially.
What South Africa do you want to see?
A better South Africa for the youth. I mean, we have people my age that are unemployed, struggling to meet basic needs. So I do want to envision a more brighter future for our youth.
Hi, my name is Vinay. I think the key issue on my side was actually to focus more on economic growth, specifically through improvements into the middle class sector for infrastructure and education. And I think that's always been a focus for a lot of our parties. Yeah, so for the longest time I've actually abstained from voting, but with the rise of a lot of the smaller parties, independent parties, with their sector-focused solutions in that regard, it's definitely driven me towards coming through to vote today.
Hi, my name is Ben. I want a free market. I want people to have opportunities to get good jobs, not rely on handouts, because ultimately, you know, like communism, socialism, which I think a lot of parties go for, it's great until you run out of the money. You know, we need to create opportunities. We need to get foreign investment. So no personalities for me, it's just policies. Create jobs, create innovations, and give people the chance to do what they want to do.
I think we've got huge issues in the country. We've got a huge unemployment rate, close to 30%. We have poor educational issues, school children. And we've got a campaign for national health insurance, which is for the future, but doing nothing about poor public health currently. So we've got over 200,000 homeless people in this country. And we've got a government that doesn't appear to be active in all these areas that I've mentioned. So they've been in power since 1994. And these are real issues affecting everyday people. And I think it's a crucial election.
Let's start with employment. Let's start with the load shedding that's going on right now. Let's start with just basically everything that we are so behind with. A lot of the world is changing and South Africa is behind because of the corruption and everything. So I think just changing parties for hope for change, obviously, will probably have an impact on that. That's why I'm standing in this line, because I'm not going to lie to you, I am so tired. The taxes, all of those things, unreasonable things that just go on for no reason. So I think that's what I want to see. I want to see change, a lot of it. Not only for me, but also for the future kids, future South Africans, everyone else.
And that was Fifi Peters speaking to some of the voters that were lined up at the Sampson Art Gallery earlier. And then, Godfrey, as you may have heard for yourself, among the biggest issues right now facing South Africa are power cuts, corruption, crime, the stark economic disparities in the economy, as unemployment, which unemployment is one of them as well. And these are some of the issues that voters say they will be taking into consideration as they approach the ballot paper and put that X on the box today. It's back to you, Power Lunch.
Thank you, Palesa. I'm not going to ask whether you voted in 1994. That answer I can see, but certainly thank you for connecting with us, with those people who are going to be making a difference. And I think the bulk of those comments certainly chime with what we put down as our key priorities here. Can I begin perhaps with you, Joseph? Very quickly, if you can just give us the kind of administration you think will be able to connect it to some of those key issues that have been identified by the voters. And if you are happy to do so, you can also spell out the kind of coalition from the parties that we have, which you think would best be placed to enable the implementation of that.
Yeah. No, thank you, Godfrey. I would love to see the fact that I voted in 94 for a first democratic government. I'm looking so much forward to coalitions and a multi-party, because that in itself will provide a better and balanced representation between the demands and the expectations of people, and also the type of supply that we need to provide towards those demands. I firmly believe this will bring common ground solutions. It's that balance that we were just speaking earlier on when you spoke about, and I like when you brought up the whole the way that the Indians are addressing the whole unemployment issue. Now, the type of solutions that I specifically see here is where you find the balance between basically what we have. Specifically, if we look at the education system, how can we leverage the education system in producing more entrepreneurs instead of just preparing young people for tertiary institutions? Because if you really look in the IT space, it's all about skills. And if somebody in a grade 7 and a grade 9, if they are very computer literate, they can come up with great solutions. And if we can, number one, start at a very early age, introduce this whole concept of entrepreneurship, because what we do in our education system, we are gearing people to go either two ways. In fact, three ways. We actually preparing students or young people for tertiary institutions, or we prepare them for to go and work. And the third thing is, if they don't find that, they become unemployed. The fourth thing that I firmly believe is to use the education system to develop entrepreneurship, so that even if the person either leaves school, that he's got an opportunity to be able to consider starting his own business. So it's, for me, it is that. And I firmly believe a multi-party system will, number one, bring better governance as well, better balanced solutions, and a better application of the resources and assets that we have. Because I firmly believe we've got those resources, we've got the assets. It's the poor management of that. And because we're not involving everybody in that decision-making, we're not getting the ultimate and the perfect solution for South Africa.
Fair point. Khulekani, can I come to you? Your thoughts? You reckon coalitions is the way to go? And I ask this question, obviously mindful that Business Unity South Africa, through the other various business structures, is working with the government on fixing some of the big problems that we have in this country.
Thanks, Godfrey. Our view is that a government that emerges from this election, whether it is a single party that wins, in this case, perhaps the ANC, or the ANC working in coalition with another partner, has got to recognize the value of the private sector and the role that the private sector can play, one, in addressing some of these challenges, as you've alluded, Godfrey, but also in growing the economy and addressing the broader challenges facing South Africa. And so we kind of keep an open mind in terms of, will it be the ANC that, again, gets over the line and form a government on its own, or will it be the ANC together with a partner? To us, because the ANC will remain a dominant political player, whichever way things go, their policies matter. And so we would watch very carefully the implementation of the policies that are pro-business, but we will also watch who they get into coalition with for exactly those reasons, that we don't think going into a coalition with a party that essentially promotes policies such as nationalization that we believe would destroy the economy and destroy opportunities in this country would be a great thing. And so those would be things that we're looking for, but we most certainly want a government that recognizes the value of the private sector, that governs in the interest of all society, in society, and puts people first. Unfortunately, we've seen instances where party machinations have tended to matter more than the interests of the rest of society.
I was going to ask you a follow-up question, which would have been perhaps a little bit tricky, because I was going to suggest that perhaps, given the record of the ANC, it might be good to vote tactfully so that you reduce the power of the ANC and enable the power of the smaller parties so they hold the ANC to account. But let's pause the thought. John, can I come to you? Your thoughts? Sounds like coalitions, yes, but he is saying it really doesn't matter who comes in the ascendancy. If it's the ANC and it follows the script that it has followed so far, things are okay. But is coalition perhaps the way to go?
Well, I think coalitions, we've reached the epoch of coalitions now. We're there. And I think the future of South African politics now is coalition politics. So you can do it badly or you can do it well. You know, speaking from a Chamber of Business point of view and from a business school point of view, I want business to be able to engage with everybody. But government's role partly is to create the conditions for business to thrive, because business is the rainmaker. You know, business has to make those things happen. And so for me, I would love to see a sort of centrist ANC in a multi-party charter arrangement. I think that would go very well. And if it's not that, we would work very robustly and positively with whoever comes on board. But the point is that if we're looking at the future of people in South Africa, and we're looking at the highest Gini coefficient in the world, highest unemployment in the world, and a mass of capable people who are excluded, nothing can happen unless all our children have a future. So we have to work for all our kids to be able to have a positive future, even if it means sacrificing now and not grasp what we want, but build for a future of what can be a great nation.
I hear you. And I didn't say at the outset that I was going to ask you another trick question, which is to ask you to give me a prediction of the outcome of the election. Prof, I'm going to be careful with you because you're sitting inside government. So my question to you is going to flip around a little bit, and I'm going to ask you, does the kind of economic quagmire that South Africa is currently in require a multi-party government as a way of resolving the issues of the country? The same recognition that the ANC recognized in 1994, even with close to two-thirds majority, to say, because of the situation that the country is, it requires everybody to come on board, and they form the first coalition government of the post-apartheid era.
Yeah, so I sit in a point of privilege, because I'm working partly with government, even though we are a state-owned entity. The privilege that I'm talking about is the privilege of having access to various government policies that are in place. And I can tell you sitting here today that our problem is not policy. Our problem is implementation of those policies. I do follow politics quite closely. especially the ANC policies and the DA policies and the EFF policies, because those are the top three kind of political parties in the country. One cannot afford not to follow them. I reviewed some of their policies and look at what is the political parties, and look at what is it that they're putting on the table. There is no, I can tell you, there is no party that has got the best policies than the ANC, in my view. Right. And I know that's too much into the politics side of things. The problem is implementation, and I'll give you an example. In the energy space where I'm playing a key role. Yeah. If you look at the issues around load shedding, for instance, it's not that we didn't have plans to deal with load shedding. Yeah. Eskom had plans. When we came in, I'm part of the National Energy Crisis Committee. Yes. Unfortunately, I can't speak on that, but when we came in to start looking at Eskom, we found that they had the operational generation recovery plan that goes down into the units to say this particular unit, this is what needs to be done. Yeah. It was the implementation that was not taking place.
I get you, but does the work that you do in NECOM, and as you said, you can't speak freely about that because obviously we're on this platform and we're talking about this particular issue around the elections, give perhaps greater credence to the argument that coalition is the way to go, because what we are seeing there is a different type of coalition arrangement, if you like. You've got government coming from this side, and you've got the private sector coming from this side, and you've got an entity that was not doing its work properly, and we have seen proper implementation of plans and recovery, and we're seeing the seeds of success now.
It's not coalition. It's no, I'll tell you the truth, because I sit in a point of privilege, like I said. Yeah. It's what we call the triple helix model that was developed by this same government to say we want to work with the public sector, the private sector, and society. Right. And that's why the current government has been working with business closely. We'll go to NEDLEC. You find these partners coming together and working together to solve particular problems for the country. I'm dealing with the hydrogen economy now. There has been talks about the foreign investment, direct foreign investment into the country. There's quite a lot of work that we have done with this government, where we're attracting foreign investment. We're looking at about 300 billion rands that will be invested between now and 2050. And that's because we looked at the Hydrogen Society Roadmap. That is a document that was developed by this government to respond to the hydrogen economy. But if we did not stand up and say, here's a document that we need to implement and start implementing, we'll be sitting without this kind of a situation where there's potentially 300 billion rand that will be invested in that particular sector. There's a whole lot of other policies. As we speak now, we've got the Renewable Energy Master Plan that is out there for public comment. That was published by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. If that document is concluded and nobody takes it forward in terms of implementation, nothing will happen. I've looked at the policies on the DA side and the EFF side on the ending load shedding kind of a thing. There's nothing compared to that which the President's Energy Action Plan. The DA, by the way, copies the ANC policy and put it as their own policy. Okay. On coalition, lastly, we have got examples of how coalitions work in this country, and they don't work. They spend the next 5 years fighting over power. Look at what happened in Johannesburg with the DA and the EFF and Khulekani and all that. Those are examples.
Okay, all right. We could go on and on and on, but I'm running out of time, and I've got two key things that I'd like us to address before we leave. And I'm going again to our virtual guest, Khulekani. Can I come to you? And this question, I'm giving you a free pass if you don't want to answer, but really I'm looking for your thoughts in terms of what kind of an outcome do you potentially see coming out of these elections?
I don't have an outcome in mind necessarily, and certainly as business, we do not have a particular expectation of an outcome, but being part of this society and having exercised my own right to vote, I think this is one of the hotly contested elections. And so there isn't going to be a party that is going to sort of come out with a very large majority, if at all. And so that gives me hope that South Africans are taking matters into their own hands and are saying that we are going to vote for what we want and are going to keep those in power accountable, which is something that has been lacking. So I'm excited about the extent of South Africans coming out to vote and being excited about this voting and not leaving the things to chance. So I think that will bode well going forward because, as I've said, we have for a long time let those in power do as they please. We need to hold them accountable so that they can deliver and implement the policies that they have promised to implement in government.
Yeah, on screen we just put some numbers in respect to the 2019 results, though they appear slightly off. Yeah, the DA didn't get 57.5%. That was the ANC. But what we're trying to illustrate was what the picture looked like in 2019. And obviously, coming into this election, we know there's certainly been a disruption of that status quo with the entrance of the Umkhonto weSizwe party and what I call the cannibalization of the ANC vote, because in essence, they are coming in to take people from the ANC and not from the DA. The person who was going to vote DA, I think, was always going to vote DA. Can I come to you, Joseph?
Yeah. No, thank you, Godfrey. Godfrey, I think the likely outcome that I would love to see is to have, and I think I made my point and I put the business case before it, why I believe that in the interest and in order to protect our democracy is to have a multi-party system in place. And I've listened to the arguments against why coalitions are not working. But I think if we do our proper analysis of why it's not working, because my common sense tells me if you have people with different views, and if we believe in diversity, and we believe in inclusivity, and you have the right people around the table, I think we will get common solutions. And if we look at just youth unemployment, which is at 61%, and if you look at the work that BUSA is doing in the space of ensuring that we have better small businesses around, and we know the conduit or that create jobs is small businesses. So for me, it's a matter of if we can, number one, making sure that from an economic enabling point of view and economic growth, that we make sure that the ecosystem is being properly developed and it works. It will lean towards inclusivity because 90% of the people is still owning less than 5% of the economy. So holistically, if we want to get making sure that we address this whole issue of unemployment, we need to be able to make sure that we create an enabling and inclusive economy in South Africa.
Yeah, and our little poll that we ran on X appears to agree with you. Just under half of the people voting there saying that they think a coalition is the outcome that will likely please the markets. You are saying it's one that will deliver the diversity in thought that's required to drive the nation forward. John?
Well, I'm going back to that segment you had when you asked the voters. I mean, what lucidity, what positivity. There was no personality. They weren't even talking about party preference. They were talking about issues and what they felt. And they were so intelligent, they were so educated, and they were so informed. That is our future. Those are the people who are voting. We have to serve those people. They've got the capability. So the outcome for me are people who will manage governance and corruption, because corruption damages entrepreneurs. It damages the young more than anything else. It takes futures from our kids, and who will make market-friendly policies. And I want to see much more skills going into government. You know, in the public service, you've got a really big job, and so you need more qualifications, more capabilities, more skills. Yeah. And I think if we get around that, whatever party comes in, and I do think it will be a coalition between, let's say,
is that your
let's say the ANC,
prediction?
my personal view, and perhaps a multi-party charter. I think we've got our work cut out. To make a coalition work, it's tough. Yeah. And we've got to face up to it and stick together and make it work. We'll make it work.
But maybe the voters make the political parties go into coalition by their choices.
I think that's a very shrewd choice. That's my personal view, and I'm looking forward to an outcome that helps us build businesses and a future for everyone.
We shall bring you back and we shall talk to your number. Dare I?
Yeah. So my prediction on the political side in terms of what outcome we're looking at is still that the ANC will still get the majority, and I know
I might be angling towards you.
Yeah. That's my prediction, and I've followed politics for quite a long time. There was a time where I would predict that the ANC will go below 50%.
Right.
And
because of the issues that the country has had to deal with, and some of them caused by the ANC itself.
Exactly. And the ANC, in the past 10 months or so, has done quite a lot in order to try and prevent that from happening. So my prediction is based on that. Yeah. In terms of my preference, as a public servant, I prefer to work with anyone who is in government, who is elected by the people. Right. Whether it's coalition, whether it's the ANC, whether it's a different party, it doesn't matter to me as long as we deliver service to the public. Yeah. And I agree with my colleague here in terms of the skills that we need in government. We need the right skills. Yeah. But I would escalate that also to cabinet, because for me, what it boils down to, the people. We have a great president in President Ramaphosa when it comes to governance and processes and fighting corruption and all that. But it is the people around him that he needs to, if the ANC wins, he needs to select people who have the same vision with him, people who will assist him in terms of delivering, in terms of implementing the various policies, the great policies that the ANC has got that have filtered into government, some of which are gathering dust, by the way. Absolutely. So for me, that is quite key going forward. I don't think a coalition government will work in South Africa. Yeah. They will spend the next 5 years hitting each other with jugs of water in
well,
cabinet.
The people shall govern, the African National Congress said, and indeed they are governing today. They are in power and they shall deliver what they want the country to be. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts, for your participation, and for joining us and discussing what is important in this country. The largest economy in Africa, by the way. Let me put it on the table. And there's this other one little story that I wanted to talk about very briefly before I go. This is a report that has come through from the World Economic Forum, and it's a survey of chief economists from around the world. The headline goes, "The economic outlook is brightening, but political risks loom large in 2024. 4 key points. 82% of the chief economists who were surveyed expect the global economy to remain stable or strengthen this year. Now, that's twice as many as in 2023. Over 2/3 predict a sustained rebound of global growth driven by technological transformation, artificial intelligence, and green transition. Gentlemen, we've been talking about education and all of those things. In the meantime, while we're squabbling what's happening in the world, they are absolutely flying. $2.3 trillion, the market cap of NVIDIA. Third point, over 2/3 predict a sustained rebound of global growth delivered by technological transformation. It's the same thing, it's the same point. And then, lastly, you can try and reach this report. It's on our website if you'd like to reach it. On the right-hand side, you will see it, and you can certainly talk about it. Once again, thank you for joining us. The rand is stable, the people are voting, and we shall be updating you as much as we can. On the other side is Power Lunch West Africa.